People say, oh, vampires are trendy, but you know, they've been trendy for me since I was about 3 years old.
It's not like anything I've ever heard about, read, or seen.
It's all geared to be extremely authentic.
So much fun. It's guerrilla filmmaking at its best.
You read it and you go, wow, this really feels like a world that existed, and this feels like something that really happened.
I've never seen this kind of a story told through the eyes of somebody that's so iconic.
It doesn't diminish any of the historical reality that we've been taught.
It's more about the emotional relationship between characters.
You need people to get absorbed into this world. You need them to forget that this isn't real history.
I think it's one of those things where you can't quite grasp it until you see some little piece of footage from it, and then you kind of go, oh, that's what this is.
Say them the truth.
What we've done is taken two exciting adventure stories and thrown them together to make a fantastical history thriller.
You know, a mashup is one way to describe it. I sort of see it as an amplification, though. I see it as taking the real ideals, the real themes, and the real events of a real hero's life, and, you know, like they say in Spinal Tap, just turning them up to 11. Giving them an absurd canvas to play themselves out on.
Tim Burton and Timur and I had done an animated movie together called Nine. We wanted to work together again. And one day we woke up, and in our email was a proposal, a book proposal, called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, for a novel that was to be written by the guy who had written Pride and Prejudice with zombies.
It was just like, I call it that chocolate and peanut butter moment of, you know, the subconscious inspiration. I was going around the country and speaking in a lot of different bookstores. It was the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth, and it was also when the Twilight books were at their hottest. So in every bookstore that I would go to around the country, no matter where it was, there was always the same two tables. There was the vampire books table, and there was the Abraham Lincoln biography table.
You know, there's something really compelling about taking those two ideas and sort of putting them together, because they do each of them have their own life to them.
We read it and immediately reacted because the idea was so simple and so powerful that you really feel it.
It just sounded to me like the kind of a movie that I wanted to see. I knew, and even before reading the book, that it was a great idea.
There's a room upstairs that isn't much, but if you were willing to work down in my store, I suppose it could be had on credit.
And the next thing I know, I'm in a room talking to these three producers. You know, there's Tim Burton, there's Timur, and there's Jim, and they're saying, well, we love this proposal, we think it's going to be a great book, and we think it could make a great movie, and if you were to write the script for the movie, you know, what would your approach be? And I said, I would play it straight down the middle. I would not apologize for being ridiculous. I would just say, I put forth this proposition that this crazy thing that we're selling you really happened, and we're not going to flinch off of that.
It certainly fits into all the elements of the story of the history of Abe Lincoln and his rise to, you know, becoming a public figure and then becoming ultimately the president.
I don't think anyone's expecting a history lesson. It just happens that there's a lot of really good history within this cool movie.
Again, the interesting thing about it is that it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. I mean, the events and the idea of him becoming a vampire hunter and like all the deaths that he had in his family and people close to him, it makes a lot of sense, and it's actually more believable than the premise makes it. So that's what was interesting, because we never wanted to make, like, it's not like making fun of anything. It's to treat it seriously and treat it like a human story and like this is the real story.
I'm not the Congress, Abe. I'm your wife.
So much of his actual life is in the movie. The movie's kind of a greatest hits of the events of his life. Though we're obviously taking liberty with adding vampires, we're not in other aspects.
We must fight for the very soul.
These are young people with real problems and real emotions and real loves and aspirations. You know, Speed and Abe and Will and Mary, they're just young, somewhat attractive people sort of trying to find their place in the world and trying to figure it all out. And in that way, I think, you know, it's relatable to anyone watching it today, because we can identify with the things that they're going through. It doesn't matter that they're going through them 150, 200 years ago. You know, they're human problems. They're the same problems.
I don't suppose you know of any rooms for rent, Mr. Speed?
What sort of room might you be looking for, Mr. Lincoln?
Well, a cheap one, as I've spent all of my money on law books and have none to spare at the moment.
Good day.
One more from the top, here we go.
You know, in terms of timeline, this happened really fast. I went right from delivering the book, the manuscript, right into meeting with Timur on a weekly basis and starting to craft the movie. I mean, we had an outline and I think even a first draft of the screenplay by the time the book even published.
Hey! Fight!
Everything what we know about him is in a movie, but the context is different. We will open the secret page of his life.
Basically, Abraham Lincoln kept journals all through his youth because his mother told him the written word is very powerful. And one of the journals was about what was going on in the darker side of his life.
The journal was just another device basically to set up the story, and then also it was a great device for getting inside of Lincoln's head at any given moment and know exactly what he was thinking.
Or it could be, if this is here, maybe it's a jump over.
The important aspect to this story for us was the idea that it's possibly real, you know, and always the idea of a journal kind of gives it a certain reality, a certain kind of secret history that we were trying to present.
The one thing thematically we kept talking about was this idea that until every man is free, we're all slaves. How would that belief then lead him through the hunting and the political aspects of his life? So we thought a lot about equality, we thought a lot about freedom, about liberty, because these are all the themes that were going on, by the way, in the 1850s and 60s. I mean, you know, it was very easy to sort of tap into what was going on. The character of Will Johnson was inspired by all of us sitting around and going, you know, we have to give the African-American community in that period a voice. And not just a woe is me voice, but an actual badass, you know, determined to make a difference voice.
You know, I feel like William Johnson is a monumental figure, not only in African-American history, but in American history. As a young actor, you don't get a lot of opportunities to play characters like Will. So when I read it, I was pretty excited about it.
Until every man is free, we are all slaves.
It was very late in the process, maybe like a week or two before we were actually getting ready to go out and pitch, and we realized that the script had no villain. There was no Adam. So literally, the week before we are going out to pitch to studios, I'm scrambling and going through and inventing this character of Adam and weaving him into the story and sort of consolidating all these vampire characters into this one nasty dude.
He's many thousands of years old and he's seen it all. He's very, very smart. He's very good talker, and I think the wonderful thing is when he gets a chance to talk to Abraham Lincoln, he can talk to him man to man. He's someone who doesn't need to use force. However, when it doesn't go his way, he can turn into an absolute vicious, head-biting monster.
There's a new concept in this movie that vampires can't kill other vampires, which is why you need assassins, for example, like Abraham Lincoln. Someone who is a human who then has to take it upon himself to kill vampires.
And action, please.
The characters I thought were really well drawn out, and the writing was clever. There were chunks of dialogue that were fun to say and fun to listen to.
Through the centuries I have searched for others to help me.
The mixture of everything made it seem like a very fun project to be part of.
The most important thing for us to get right was casting. If we couldn't find somebody to play Abraham Lincoln, it would be obviously very hard to make the movie. We looked at literally thousands of people.
Oh no, we gotta make a movie, guys. All these shenanigans.
He can't be mucking about.
When I saw him, it was clear that we found him. He's the only actor I can imagine in the movie. He's honest, he's brave, he's real.
We were always very careful about just making sure that Lincoln's humanity and the person was there, and that's what Ben was very aware of and was very good at trying to be right there as the heart of the movie.
And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
The challenge is making all of these different sides of Abraham Lincoln real and fully realized. And that's usually gratifying as an actor, and we hope for the audience as well.
It's inspiring, it's like working with Abe Lincoln, because he's just this kind of honest, unfussy presence in the middle of it, this kind of calm in the middle of it all, and that really works.
One of the things I love about the film is just the chemistry between Mary Winstead and Ben Walker. I love, the fact that you really do feel that these people feel for each other, and it provides a really nice contrast to sort of the dark and bloody things that are going on in Lincoln's nightlife.
It's very sweet. It's almost, our scenes in the beginning are almost akin to a romantic comedy or something, and as we get older and we both go through a lot, and I'm sort of, standing by him as he's growing, politically and running for president, and all the while he's got this secret life that he's hiding from me, and it creates this real growing tension between the two of us, because there's this unspoken thing where it's, he's got this secret life and I know that he has a secret life, and I might not know what it is, but I know something's going on, and it's this kind of quiet communication between the two of us that's a little bit sad sometimes.
There were multiple studios interested in doing it, and Fox went all out. Just from the get-go, they were excited about this movie, and they got it, and they knew exactly what they were getting into.
We came to the studio to pitch the movie, and they had put up banners and made posters and had actual real physical buglers playing armed reveille songs. They had made Silver Bullets. There was a Bloody Axe and Bloody Boots by Tom Rothman's Door. And of course, after we'd gone through the whole process, they were the natural home for us.
If it's a war for the freedom of man, why not give all men a reason to fight it?
I think Abraham Lincoln stands for the best of what we can suppose to be as human beings.
All of those qualities that we know Abraham Lincoln to have make him an exceptional vampire hunter.
It's almost like he's the original superhero, but he's human.
Like Timur said, he's the Batman of the 1800s. His hunting coat is his cape. His axe is his utility belt. His hat is his mask. By day, mild-mannered store clerk, clumsy around girls, not necessarily menacing, a little goofy even. By night, he's a brutal killer.
You lied to me!
He's a dispenser of justice. He's so iconic. His legacy is so strong that it can support an absurd, fun treatment like this.
This movie is a location film, and we did 4 months of location scouting on this film to find all the locations. We had a few builds on stage, but the majority was out and around New Orleans.
New Orleans is so visually extraordinary. I mean, we really approached it without any consideration of it being a vampire movie. We approached it as if it was a real historical drama. And somehow the vampires, you know, sort of lead you into this path that creates a whole other atmospheric and lighting quality that suits, you know, the world that they live in.
My concern is that it's too close quarters.
Okay, but it's not your choice. Shooting this in New Orleans and shooting this on locations, again, is an element that, you know, you feel it more. I mean, rather than just being on sets or green screen or something, I think the idea of shooting in locations was really important.
We can shoot slow. I think New Orleans was a perfect place to shoot this movie because the drama of the movie, thematically, it's very connected, you know, with the New Orleans.
You have so many different diversified looks that are unique to America in one place. You know, you can have the French Quarter that you can turn into unique and interesting places. You also have very close, you have country and fields and vegetation that plays for Gettysburg and all these places. So it's quite diverse, and it has a variation in looks that allow us to achieve everything in one place, which of course, as a filmmaker, that's what you're always trying to.
I think it was just this great place to come. You know, you go into some of these old historic homes in New Orleans, and some of these locations are 150, 160 years old, and you can't find them anywhere on the West Coast. If you build them, they're double, triple, quadruple in terms of cost. And so you try to find and shoot in practical locations.
We're shooting Abe's arrival to Springfield, Illinois.
You are 15 yards further away this time.
He arrived April 15th, 1837. It's really exciting because it actually corresponds perfectly with when we're shooting. It will be the anniversary, the 174th anniversary. So it worked out to be kind of a perfect fit on the calendar.
Thank you.
This was actually probably the most challenging location to find for us because it had to work for so many scenes and we needed really total control. We ended up rebuilding an entire block here and taking over an abandoned building and putting exterior store facades in, and of course building the entire interior of Speed's store and his room above.
That was a challenge, getting that ready that quickly. We purchased a lot of the goods for Speed's prior, all types of period bottles and tins and spools of thread, and it was a complete blur. We dressed that like we did that whole shop, that whole store in like 3 days.
I don't suppose you know of any rooms for rent, Mr. Speed?
We're also shooting in the old City Hall, which is in the downtown Central Business District. Right now it's an empty building used for weddings, but it's a terrific example of federal architecture that's really well preserved, and we're using about 6 or 7 rooms inside that building to turn into the White House.
It's going to get dangerous, Abe.
We were trying to be, as much as we can in a genre movie, we were trying to be historically correct and be very specific, like in costumes.
The big challenge of this movie was to have different periods, because we start from the 1820 and we go till the 1863.
So we had a lot of periods to play with. The fashion was changing every 10 years, so we had to be very, very accurate with all the changes. Plus, it's the action movie, so it was a lot of things which we had to deal with.
Wardrobe always has a huge effect for me and how I carry myself and the way that the words come out of my body. So it's definitely helped me get into character. It makes you stand up a little straighter. It makes you behave in a different way.
I'm Abraham Lincoln.
Mary Todd.
Darling, there you are.
There's always that great moment when you put on a costume and you look in the mirror and you
you hope there's a moment of sort of it all comes together. Especially in period piece, you know, even the discomfort of a costume can inform you as to the period. You know, it was a very buttoned-up time.
Was that right? Yes, you did well.
For everything, we use the historically accurate references, shapes, and everything. Then we add just a little bit, a small touch of something what can look more attractive.
It was very important to Timur that this world is relatable, that it's not a stuffy costume drama, that it's also a lot of fun, and we tried to create elements that younger audiences, for example, could relate to.
If I ever see you here again, I will have your balls as a coin purse!
It doesn't at any point feel old-fashioned, and I think that that's a misinterpretation of costume dramas and period pieces, that everyone in them is very stuffy and old-fashioned. You know, you don't know that. None of us really know how people behaved or what they got up to. You know, it's our job to make them vibrant and real and three-dimensional and into people that we could socialise with and have a fun time with. And I think Ben's certainly doing that with Abraham. He's making him, it's a really exciting character who you want to get to know and want to know more about.
What's dangerous about playing an icon is that you don't allow him to be human. You don't allow him to be specific and vulnerable and silly and everything that everyone else takes for granted. We put him on such a pedestal that we don't allow him to be a human being. And luckily Timur was open to that. Because we know what he did in his life. Now let's discover what we don't know about it.
He's been so much fun to work with. I mean, I was so relieved to get to set and to be with someone who can let loose and just be totally silly and ridiculous. You know, that's something that makes me really comfortable because, I mean, you have long days, long hours, and when the cameras aren't rolling, you have to be able to just have a good time and joke around with each other or else you go crazy.
I do. Ben Walker is a great Abe Lincoln. I mean, there's something very appealing about him and very, you know, he has an intelligence about him and, you know, I mean, he was very good at sort of grounding what he did, you know, with his character. That, you know, even when it ventured off into hunting vampires, he held on to the dignity of Abraham Lincoln, which I think is what's so extraordinary about the whole piece.
It was very important for me to follow his sensibility, I mean Ben Walker, to follow his criticism and knowledge and everything, what he knows about the life. It was only a way for me to make this movie, to pick the actor I trust and who is as a personality can be Lincoln, and then just follow him. Because I'm not an American, I cannot really guarantee that what I feel, it's what the audience feels.
What's exciting about Timur is that though he understands the history and understands what it means to us as Americans, he's not American. So he doesn't have a reverence or a worship for it. And that then frees us up to, in some ways, make it more realistic than what we learned in history class, and at the same time look at it through the lens of this mashup.
Because we're dealing with this crazy concept, everything in support of it needs to be authentic and emotional and real. And I think when people watch the film, that they'll see that detail, that authenticity is there.
It's one of those things, you have discussions about, this is a period piece, we must be sticking to the period and making sure that's always correct. And then you go, but hold on, it is also a film about vampires.
One thing that we did early on was we really took advantage of the locations that were available to us in New Orleans that were really preserved 19th century locations that really weren't in the script, but we kept an open mind and adapted some of these scenes to take advantage of these locations, like the pharmacy. There's a terrific 19th century pharmacy that's straight out of 1850, totally preserved. And Abe goes to kill a vampire pharmacist in this pharmacy.
Okay. Okay. What do you want? Yes, Em. Give me a prescription or what do you have? Okay. Ah, good.
Fortunately, the pharmacy is a pharmacy museum, but we did put our own things in there, but we used a lot of their pieces that were on the wall, so that was very convenient.
We're also creating a prostitute alley in one of the back sort of courtyards hidden away behind Bourbon Street.
That was cool because that's the first time, that particular scene in the alleyway was when, that was the first time I discovered what my character would be like and look like when he turned into a vampire. And it was also Abraham's first discovery of Henry.
Hey!
But again, it was constantly changing while we were filming because there were just bits that weren't working.
Hey, stop. Lied to me! No.
I love that kind of stuff because you have to make sense of it and you have to work out a way to make sense of it. And I think we achieved that evening.
I'm here to hunt vampires, Henry, not to partner with them.
We've also got Adam's plantation, and it was impossible for us to find a large plantation interior. They just don't exist anymore. There's only 4 or 5 preserved plantations in southern Louisiana. And we looked at them all, and they just were all not right for the film. So it became pretty clear early on that we needed to build that set, especially for the amount of control that Timur needed for the action and the special effects in the scene.
The way it's designed is fantastic. It's like old, decayed grandeur. Because I think Adam is an appreciator of things that are eternal. At least he can take the time to look at it as it decays, you know.
We're shooting at the Yamalos property, which is a huge property about an hour north of New Orleans. We're doing 3-4 days of shooting with second unit. We've got battlefields going. First unit is shooting the Gettysburg Address. They shot that yesterday, and then today they're here shooting the Union Camp. The Civil War evolved. It started out as being just a couple pages of, of a transition, and it kind of grew as these things tend to grow into an incredibly epic sequence in the film.
3, 2, 1, go!
When we first came out, months and months before we started shooting, one of the first locations we looked for was Civil War battlefields. Because to actually get a large acreage, like we had 250, 300 acres of land without any kind of foliage that we had to move, it took us maybe a month to find it. You know, we had a few options, but the place we found was probably by far the best location we could have found.
Immediately upon coming here, we decided we've got to use this place because it's so diverse. You get so many different looks. You've got sort of prairie land and pastures and big fields and kind of some rolling hills, which is really hard to find in southern Louisiana where it's so flat. So we're getting a lot of value out of this one location to double as locations on East Coast Virginia and Pennsylvania, and it's turning out to be pretty successful.
I talked to many people who worked on the recreation battles from, the Civil War, Revolutionary War, and it was always find the reenactors, let them do the heavy lifting, bring in the extras and supplement. So that was our game plan from the start of the show.
My responsibility is to make sure that I get as many guys in here as possible who can truly authenticate the Civil War, to come in to help train the background guys to use the weapons the right way, along with props and all the armory guys and things like that.
There were so many extras brought into this that had no concept of military formation, especially in this time period. So we as a reenacting community would help them learn the drill as far as not only the marching maneuvers and the firing demonstrations, or the firing in this case, the proper way and mainly the safe way so nobody was getting hurt.
A little bit farther, a little bit, just a little bit. Let's go, camera.
We really relied with the reenactors to come in and work with us to create a camp using their own tents and cots and blankets.
Yeah, if we can move some tents in the center.
So 80% of it is actually provided by the reenactors. Then we came in and we did our pass on top of it to augment it and just push it over and make it that much more dynamic.
You know, it's an inspiring thing when you come to work and there's 700 extras there dressed in vintage outfits. It's like a rock concert in a way, you know, and you start to appreciate what these guys put together on these big venues. But to have 700 extras and a couple hundred more crew, it takes a lot of planning in terms of safety, bathrooms, food, wardrobe, makeup. And so you have a full sort of community that comes in, sets up, brings these extras in, changes them into that period, gets them ready, gets them on the battlefield in an hour, 2 hours, and lets them run around for 12 hours with guns and cannons and explosions. And at the end of the night, cleans them up, takes off the facial hair, takes off the wigs, stores the costumes back up, and gets it ready again for the next morning. So out of the entire movie, those are 3 of the more intense production days we had, just because we're working around daylight. We had a limited amount of time to do it, and it was the largest amount of people we had at one location.
So we had the Union camp, the Confederate camp. We also built the platforms for the Gettysburg Address there, and that we got really lucky there because on the day it was just such a terrific day with dramatic clouds that really were an evocative backdrop for Lincoln's words. I mean, it really was kind of a magical day.
Remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion.
You know, Timor is doing this in such a period-specific way, and everything down to little details. I mean, everything is specific to the period, and it's kind of remarkable when you look at the amount of detail that they're putting into it to think that it's a vampire movie.
Audience, probably 99%, they don't care, but they feel that it's real. They feel that it's not a lie. And it was very important for this movie because we are trying to open the secret page of Lincoln's story. And it means the first page has to be real, otherwise everything will be fantasy.
It's not pretending to be a great lecture on history, and it's not an all-out action, blood and horror movie. It's got a mix, which I think personally makes it very, very entertaining.
Doing the typical kind of stylistic action. It's a martial arts film in a way, but it's a little more gritty. So we're trying to mix the 2 worlds of like slick Hong Kong and bare knuckles, knock down, drag out. And then Timur will throw his slant on it in post.
Yes. Got it. Good.
The action is it's like unusual. I think action is continuation of the drama. It's not separate thing, like, oh, okay, this is a story, this is action. If you understand exactly why this character fighting against his opponent, then the action scene becomes a poetical way how to develop this conflict. And also it means what kind of weapon the people use and how they fight.
I can do that all day. Luckily, we had an amazing stunt team. And these gentlemen not only taught me a new martial art form, they created one, which is something that's unique to this movie and unique to Lincoln, which involves axe fighting.
You're going to see things that are just, you would think that are CGI, but they're not. It's really been doing it, and that's the cool part about this. There's a lot of audience be like, hey, how did he spin that thing around his back or around his neck, or how did he do that, you know, rotating around, you know, his whole body with no hands? That's CGI. No, that's been.
One of the keys, if not the key to this film working or not working, was Ben. And not only being a classically trained actor and being a guy who came from the theater, but he also has the physicality that the part requires. He was able to do all the axe work, he was able to do all the fighting.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that special effects can't quite cover. You know, you have to do that, and it's not something that you can really fake too much. And so not only do you have to learn the Gettysburg Address, but he learned how to, you know, twirl an axe. So he had full training.
I don't think anybody's seen some of the things we're doing in the movie, in movies before.
particularly the axe. The image of the axe we associate with Honest Abe, and here it is a weapon of vengeance.
The axe is the hero prop of the movie, the axe and the hat. You know, you can't have Lincoln without the huge hat, and you can't have the vampire hunter without the axe. This particular axe was done in the style of 19th century forge, completely custom made with a hickory handle. And this is a real heavy steel axe that you could use to take down a tree. We have the heavy rubber that can be used for stunts, but it's a little bit lighter. It can be flipped and do all the stuff. Then we've got the very soft rubber version that you can hit somebody with. It's completely safe.
They do a lot of cool things with the axe. You know, the axe has the axe is just not an axe. I mean, there's a bayonet in the axe, there's a shotgun in the axe.
You use the blade as your grip, and that allows you to fire one round at your opponent.
We've got like trick axes, we've got chopping axes, we've got rubber axes, we've got spinning axes. We've got more axes than you can shake a stick at.
You'll never see a person use an axe like this, that's for sure, in any movie.
He's unbelievable with the axe. Like what Ben Walker did, he's a very unique. He's physically so good, and he spent 3 months to learn how to manipulate with the axe. And it's like a circus. Like you cannot imagine that person can do it. Just the axe flies around.
He's the guy who would come in, train for 8 hours, and then, you know, later on that night would still be twirling the axe while he's watching television or just hanging out. And throughout the weeks and throughout the show, you'll see Ben just carrying the axe and just swinging along, and just kind of becomes second nature. It's a part of him.
I hit myself in the head with it a lot. Trial and error, dropped it, hit stunt guys, mostly made a mess of things.
It's not physically simple to do. It's like baton twirling with a sharp blade. You got to be really, you know, he can hurt people, but he's fabulous. He's really doing a great job.
I had an unbelievable stunt team, and a friend of mine from Russia, Igor Tsai, he and his team in Kazakhstan, they developed all the fights in Kazakhstan and shot it.
Me and my team worked on it for 5-6 months. We're creating, like, just making a list of ideas, taping it, editing it, sending it to Timur, and he was like giving comments about that, and we made changes.
And then we, when we had some moments, elements, ideas, then we had a team in Moscow. They rotoscoped these movements and created the 3D models, repeating what people in Kazakhstan proposed. And then when I had a 3D fight, like in 3D space, then I could put cameras and figure out how to shoot this fight. Then I presented it to my actors, and they rehearsed here with Nick Rogers, his team. Then they had their own interpretation of this fight. But mainly, the whole idea was born in Kazakhstan, of the fighting scenes, then developed in Moscow, executed in New Orleans.
This is the part where we realize we're denizens. Abraham Lincoln comes in to save me from my demise.
1, 2, 3, split!
What they need to see here is they need to see he's struggling, then the splash of the blood in his costume, he looks where it flies from. Okay.
It's basically me just, you know, doing what I can to try and stay alive before I'm eaten.
For Will, we created capoeira fighting. Capoeira style came from Africa, and it was forbidden for all these guys to study martial arts. So historically, they turned it to a dance, just to hide that it is a martial art.
For me, once I realized what's going on, it's just fighting to get myself out of the situation till Abraham Lincoln comes in to save the day.
Tonight we're killing vampires in the ballroom. Obviously. Blood, guts, death all around. Lincoln is trying to save the day with this.
The ballroom set posed a unique set of difficulties. The first thing being is that when we all looked up, we were supposed to see this beautiful dome-like structure with this wonderful painting inside of it, and the painting comes to life, and the vampires come out of that painting and land on the set, and this fantastic battle takes place.
We're gonna have guys jumping down from the ceilings up here. We're gonna have about 6 guys recycling, so we got about 12 drops that we're doing.
This build is great. This fly is great. When he lands, he already has to be already landing.
Just to kind of get through the fight tonight, we're gonna go ahead and have these guys kind of imitate as if they did come off the ledge, but just doing off the steps just to establish them in the shot. And then we will get into the first few beats of the fight, which was seeing how badass Lincoln is.
This is Abe's peak. This is right at his best fight in terms of a vampire. He's at his best at being an assassin.
Timur's idea was to create a waltz of death. You know, waltz, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And Timur wanted to create the fight that will match this tempo, musical tempo. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Playback, please. Be marked.
Then when I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, that's great.
What's exciting about that is we worked on that fight in its entirety. That we didn't do it in chunks, that the stunt guys at least had enough faith or were crazy enough to let me do the whole thing as a one piece. That was a lot of fun for me because you're just lopping off heads and hands and legs and flying off of walls. It's what you imagine doing when you're 6 years old and you're out in the woods with a stick. But for some reason, I get paid to do it.
Action, please.
The Vadoma scene is extremely technical. After this great battle is ensued, there's a chair that lands over Abraham Lincoln's head, basically, and shoulders, and Vadoma lands from the ceiling on top of him.
Basically what we'll see is Vadoma doing a flash kick to Abe, sending him towards Adam. In mid-air, Adam's throwing a chair at her. She catches the chair and lands right on top of Lincoln.
We spoke with Timur about this gag, and he liked the idea that Vadoma should be like an athlete. When athlete runs and make a long jump, he's doing this gag like 1, 2 in the air, 3, and we wanted to use the same gag with Vadoma.
I'm a very physical person by nature, so to go in and, you know, throw kicks and to learn the martial arts aspect of it has been really, really fun. Obviously, some of the more technical and difficult things, and anytime things are rigged and, you know, there's cords and lines involved, then the pros take over. But it's been really fun to go into that element as well. I mean, I have this extraordinary stunt devil named Shauna who, you know, with her skills and what I brought to the scene, creates such an extraordinary feat of entertainment.
This way, she grabbed the chair.
Some of the methodology is to shoot it forward, and some of the methodology is to shoot it in reverse. So when you see these precision landings, they're not precision landings, they're precision takeoffs. So the chair is placed in the correct position, the stunt actress is placed in the right place, Ben is really placed in his position, and the shot is done in reverse. We pull them off and do the flips and spins, and then by not real magic or any magic at all, we just reverse the film.
It was about 4 or 5 hours of rehearsal, timing out the chair, because what happens is that she goes up in the air, does the flash kick, spots the chair, grabs the chair, throws it between her legs, and lands on Lincoln. So it's a pretty intense process because you want to go ahead and see what is the best thing we can do with the amount of time that we had, and we're able to pull it off.
Okay.
I usually have that effect on women.
Right now we are shooting the final beat of the ballroom when Speed saves Lincoln and Will by like very crazy carriage ride, coach ride. And tomorrow we'll start the Silver Train sequence, and we'll start from Will shooting vampires. Vampires attack.
Thank you. Ready and action!
This moment, Timur wants to make a little bit horror style. So vampires break through the walls, they grab Will, and Will is trying to shoot the walls. He don't see vampires, but he can feel it. And sometimes he shoot the wall, but no one's there, and one vampire grabs him from behind. So it's kind of very messy fight, a little bit chaos, but it is horror fight, horror scene.
There's one gag that I love in Silver Train. It's when there's a vampire that's hiding in the ceiling, surprise to the audience, jumps on Lincoln. The slide doors open to the boxcar, and Lincoln, the guy's about to bite Lincoln, grabs his hand, puts the axe on the handle, shoulder throws the vampire, closes at the same time, smashing his head off. This kind of stuff, I think is great.
I think on the train sequence for Mick, I think his most important thing was getting the actors to do as much as they could in camera. As much as we can make the train move safely with the actors integrated with our moving train, the better the performance is, so the audience doesn't see a green screen performance that they're acting on a box. Here they're really acting on full-scale trains, although on a stage, that are moving the way they should.
You get on the top of a train car in a big green warehouse, and then the stunt guys rig up half a dozen to a dozen stunt fighters that are all gonna try and kill you. They put a rubber axe in your hand and say, good luck.
Not perfect, he's 55 years old.
Right. When Will and Lincoln fighting together with one axe, it's two friends, and they have only one weapon, only one axe. If I'm Lincoln, I'm chopping the vampire head, and I have to continue the movement to transfer my axe to my friend, and he will chop the head of vampire, another vampire, and give it to me. And it has to be absolute. We have to be like one organism, like one person.
Profile wide shot here. They will spend time presenting and we will shoot this.
Also, the action form is a poetical way how to describe their relationship. They're ready to die for each other, they feel each other, they're friends.
Next bit!
It's good to have this opportunity to work this way. When you create idea and when everybody put his effort to make it real.
I think the best way to describe it, we're all big kids and we're having fun making a movie. We try to basically all try to work as a team and collaborate ideas and try to come with the best fight we can possibly do.
The great thing about these big movies is those action sequences, you just get to go as far as you can and learn new styles of fighting and just do everything you want to do, and you just feel like you go home at the end of the day and you can beat up anybody in the world. But you can't, because it's not real.
When I read the script for the first time, given the vast scope, I mean, it was totally overwhelming. It was probably my first initial instinct of just the massive amount of makeup that was going to be required for it. It was a double whammy. It's like almost two movies at once. We've got the crossover with the special effects makeup and also the period that we need to try and keep as best as we can.
It all obviously started with getting Ben cast as Lincoln, and then everything else kind of fell in place. But we knew we were going to have to take a series of ages for all the characters through the film because we cover such a large time span of Lincoln's life. So it was a lot of trying to figure out which ages we were going to take place in the script, and we kind of ended up landing in 2 spots really in the story. Probably 2/3 of the film, he's in his 20s, early 30s, and for the latter half of the film, he's anywhere from 50 to 56. So we use the same makeup that we designed for the 52 makeup with a different makeup on top of those appliances to make him look younger, slightly younger, 50 and no beard. And then when he grew his beard, and then during his presidency, he has the beard, and we carry that through to 56 to his assassination. So those were the 2 main looks. We also designed a 40 between the debate with Stephen Douglas. That's a pretty serious makeup with, I think, everything covered: his forehead, cheeks, chin, nose, and upper lip.
I'm amazed with Ben. Ben's, you know, I think we were very blessed with having Ben do this role because you have to have a lot of patience being the person in the chair for 3 hours or 5 hours. So when Ben's young, as a young Abe, it's a 2.5 to 3 hour process of hair, makeup, and, you know, wardrobe. Then when he's older Abe, that is a 5-hour job. So if we start at 11 o'clock, he's in before any of us are awake. You know, there have been times where we're shooting at 7 a.m. and he's at work at 1 a.m. starting his process.
We'd show up about 6 hours before everybody else got there, and you get really comfortable in the makeup chair, and you sit there and try not to freak out. It's pretty much my life for about 4 months.
First stage is we have to put a bald cap on Ben to push his hair down. We don't want to see his hair. The bald cap gives us more forehead space for the appliance that goes on top of that. So we mat his hair down as flat as we can get it, then we put the bald cap that pushes the hair down even further. And then we start with his chin, and we move to his nose and upper lip, and then we do cheek, and then forehead on top of that, and then ears, and then eye bags.
Greg was so nice because he rigged up a little television on the mirror, so I'm not just staring into the void for hours and hours, and we watched movies. You know, we made it as comfortable as possible.
He'll sit and watch 1 or 2 movies. 2 movies when we're doing the old makeup, and 1 movie when we're doing the young makeup. Sometimes it works where you can shoot the actor Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the makeup, and you have a day off to turn the actor around or to give their skin a break. Ben is nearly in every scene in this film all the way through. There's not many. When I looked at the original breakdown, I was like, he's either in the old age makeup or he's in the young makeup every single day in this picture. So we knew that was going to be a monumental challenge.
It was a huge rush because it's so meticulously applied and so flexible that it becomes your face.
You have to be careful. You're creating a character that everyone recognizes from the penny and $5 bill and everything else that you learn when you're in school. And Ben Walker is an actor who has a face, and you have to be careful not to lose him in that makeup. So we had to be very careful about introducing what Abraham Lincoln looks like and still keep Ben in that makeup.
It certainly becomes you. I mean, it's one thing to pretend you're someone and play a different character. It's another thing to truly change your entire visage. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, and it really informs you and changes you internally, and half the work's done for you.
You're just getting all the glamorous stuff, huh?
When I first saw him, I just think, you know, he looks phenomenal. He just carries it incredibly well. It's hard for a young person to carry off an old man, and he does it straight away. I think you know, instantly as he's going into that character and it's covering him, I think it helps him. I'm sure it does.
I say for makeup, we should start close. So if it starts to melt, we can back out.
I was lucky to go to a great conservatory. I got to go to the Juilliard School, and there it's a very classical training program, and you have a lot of training in mask and neutral mask. And you know, when you're going to school there, you think, when am I ever going to use this? And lo and behold, here we are. And it is mask work. It's developing a relationship with you and the mask, and with what people see and what it feels like, and using all those tools to tell the story that you're trying to tell. So that kind of training has really lent itself nicely to this.
Well, I've dealt with a lot of characters that have makeup on them over the years, and you know, every actor I've ever worked with said it unleashes something from inside of them that they wouldn't have ordinarily had. And especially a character as iconic as Lincoln, I think it's a way to really become that character.
Ben not only has the acting chops, but he kind of eerily looks the part. You know, you put that nose on him and you do his hair up a little, and all of a sudden you buy that that's a young Abraham Lincoln. And then certainly later in the film, when he's in the complete makeup, you really buy that that is the 16th president.
It's one thing to use prosthetics and do an acting scene. It's another thing to use prosthetics and do a fight scene. So that was complicated and difficult, but nothing like seeing the dailies and seeing how magnificent it looks to really make you suck it up. It was really worth it.
Ready, action! Here's another one.
Our vampires were actually our stunt guys, and we had to make 10 stunt guys look like 50 stunt guys. Some of the stunt guys were doubling our principals, and so we would tell them to grow their hair, and then the next day there were going to be a stunt guy in the ballroom, and so we had to shave that off and then add something else to make them look different, but then they go back to being the Henry stunt double the next day. So we really had to change the look from all these stunt guys, so hopefully they won't recognize that they are the same people throughout the show.
There was a lot of debate and discussion where we were going to go with the vampires. Originally, the book has them as demon vampires. They have black eyes. We were told very early on by Timur that he wanted to keep this as the whole scope of the film as almost a part of history, that it could be a believable part of history. So he told us very early, no monsters. So we stuck with the idea that if they are plantation owners and they have to pass as humans down the street, you would never think twice that they were anything other than a human being. We had to stay very, very subtle.
Like in every vampire movie, they have a pale skin and they have blue veins. But overall, there was no goal for me to say, oh, I'm making something new. I'm just doing vampires you've never seen before. Because otherwise, if I will do it, I will lose the more interesting contrast between traditional genre and traditional biopic.
Cover face, yeah, that's it. Right behind you. Behind.
So many vampire films have been done. What can you do different now that you can't use appliances to change them into some type of form of monster? And it's like, it seems to be pretty typical veins. And we went through, like, we're going to do varicose veins designs. We had these very squirrely kind of veins that went around to different places on their face, and we're going to do stretch and stipple and age their faces so that when they morphed from humans into these vampires, that they would have kind of an old look. And that kind of, and again, Timur kept coming back over and over again saying subtle, very subtle, very subtle. And so we went really subtle to the point of where he just kind of maybe wanted painted veins that were very light that you could see beneath the skin as their day look. And then as they morph into vampires, then we have a much substantial vein patterns that go on their faces.
I designed the pre-vamped out look, which when I spoke with Timur, didn't want them to stand out, but he wanted something creepy about them, so they were slightly different. So of course, you know, we went for the pale look, the sunken eyes. We very lightly brushed in some veins, try to just make them look sickly, but without them looking obviously sickly, just something creepy looking. And then when they completely vamped out, the stage was that these three-dimensional veins were applied, and then they did a full airbrush paint job with, you know, bigger veins and lenses, teeth. And that was taken care of. You know, Greg Canham designed that, and then we executed it for him.
The process is about an hour and a half, and Steve Prouty, one of the guys that works with us, he came up with a process for creating vein patterns. And it's a very interesting process, but basically it's kind of like tattoo transfers that you put on your skin, you wet them on the backside and they stick. So that same process, and then they have a nice light paint job, so they go from, you know, a natural skin tone to kind of a light skin tone. Like any kind of road map, you can actually put them on top of one another and create really interesting patterns. So they're almost like a jigsaw puzzle of veins that you could put together on each person, try to make them look different. Because we knew that we had 10 core stunt guys that were going to have to replicate different vampires all the way through. So we couldn't create one set of patterns that would, you know, that you could obviously see with the same people over and over again. So we decided to come up with different patterns for different, so we could multiply them and make 10 vampires out of one guy.
The other thing that was difficult for this show was that we were based here, but then we shot for 3 weeks on different locations. So every single location we were wrapping down, having to pack everything up and move it to our next location.
Let's move. Yeah, let's move, guys.
When we shot both Gettysburg and Civil War 1st and 2nd units, we had an entire tent of people that was devoted to just doing the vampires that would be on the battlefield. And then we had us and another group of people doing all the people that needed to be in background, plus Abe played in the big makeup that day.
Around here you'll see makeup artists putting on hair pieces, wounds, cuts, making them into dead bodies. Everything we need to do the scene that we're shooting, which is the vampires coming through the fire of the Union soldiers.
Cut.
Thank you. Anytime.
This is our first day of the big battle scenes. We're shooting all our battle scenes in 4 days. And what we're doing here is a lot of the gore prosthetic effects, a lot of the dead bodies, necks torn out, things like that we can drag out there and dress this field with. Things that are a little more far gone than a human, you know, an extra could do or something like that.
We are the Union, yes, and we were killed by vampires.
It's a lot of chaos because there's so many extras, there's so much going on, and you just kind of need to be prepared for everything and just stand by until, you know, it's your turn up, and once it's your turn up, it's more chaos.
Feeling a lot better now. Pepto-Bismol, a little aspirin, and it practically brought me back to life.
I think overall it was a challenge just in the scope of what we had to actually put together for those days. You just have an enormous group of people that you have to get done within a certain amount of time and get them out there. So you got to hire a good group of folks around you that normally it's people that you worked with before to be able to kind of organize these large days.
Pop yourself right in there.
But we were lucky enough that we got all the people that we wanted to bring in, and everybody did a phenomenal job.
Let's start very dynamic move. A lot faster. Let's move. Yeah, let's move.
Timur is such a visual director. We sat down together and spent a lot of time together in pre-production, just drawing and sketching and coming up with illustrations and ideas that really would play out well in the frame.
From other side, can you show me?
He's got a tremendous graphic sensibility that I was trying to convey through the set design. And he's also got a very quirky and fun sort of way of seeing the world.
You can't pay for, you know, a style, and that's what Timur has. You know, he's got a certain way of doing things, which, you know, really money can't buy. You know, it's something that only a person can bring to it.
You gotta do one more take.
You know, some people are less is more people. Timur is a more is more kind of guy. You know, and he does only what he can. I think he invents these insanely fun, incredibly visual pieces of action and then sort of supplements them with, you know, all that detail.
Either one or pull inside. So let's do separately.
Timur comes from a production design background. He's extremely visually oriented. You can look at a lot of his sketches, and sometimes when he's unable to articulate something verbally, he'll be able to sit down and sketch it out for you in a matter of seconds, which is really great to work with from any director.
We don't have shots like this in Washington. It's a totally new thing. Okay.
Most of the communication with Timur was with drawings and pictures that he had done, and it was sort of a visual communication. I mean, it was almost silent in a way. And I think a lot of our relationship, I mean, a lot of Timur and my relationship was nonverbal. It was much more visual. I mean, it was more Timur saying, no, or yes.
Every time when he explains something to people, it's not because he can't explain it in
body language. No, it's much better when he grabs paper and start to draw and start to explain to people and start to understand that something can be better, and he forgot about everybody and he said, oh, this is good. And everybody say, oh, okay, so not this. No, 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 this is better. And it's 5 or 6 versions, and he goes, and starts to understand, so that it is great.
Roll it. He lands, boom, and rolls, and opens.
Okay. Timur always wants to do what has not been done. He wants to create an image that hasn't been seen. He wants to kill someone in a way they've never been killed. And that's very exciting, because then you're not just hitting people with an axe. You're doing something very specific. And the more specific something is, the more fun it is for an actor.
Timur's really great because he's one of those guys that he opens the floor for discussion. He wants to see everything. So whatever ideas you have, you can give him, you know, 3 or 4 options, and he goes, I love it. Now take the best ideas of those options and make something better out of it.
Okay, we can do now. You throw the axe. He wasn't ready. He said.
What makes Timur a great action director is that he approaches action from a perspective. In other words, he's bringing a perspective that I never considered, and subsequently the imagination's wide open, full throttle, and from that comes something amazing, something you never saw before.
Don't stop, start right away.
He obviously wants the story to be moving forward, but he wants it to be a ride, you know, a visual ride and a visceral ride, and at the right moments and beats of the movie, and his driving force of just making it better.
From Timur's visual style, there's lots of things, you know, he's known for. His signature, for example. Speed ramps is one of them. On this film, we decided early on that we wanted to try out a few things. We've shot a lot with the Phantom, which was technically challenging in and of itself. The great thing about it, though, is that, you know, you could be shooting upwards of 1,000 frames per second, and then we could be ramping in and out of those.
I need a static, like, because everything's shot in high speed.
Timur was infatuated with it. I think if he could shoot the whole movie with a Phantom at 1,000 frames a second, he would have done it. And I mean, it is really fascinating to look at what you get, but it's, you know, it's only a small part of storytelling.
He loves using slow motion, and I think this helps a lot to focus viewer attention on specific moments that Timur wants them to focus on. This is also very, very important for him. During the editing process, we can create like cool speed ramps like you see in here, when he's slowing down to very, very like extreme slow motion before he goes for a kill. For him, choreography of ape fighting with an axe, like this is what's unique about this film, is iconic American president fighting with an axe, killing vampires. So the choreography and of an axe is important to show in this movie. Also, vampire blood, since we've spent a lot of time developing what it's supposed to look like. He shows those moments. He shows how the blood emerges from the vampires in like extreme slow motion.
The other sorts of things that Timur likes to do is to try and objectify the objects, or give it in some ways a subjective sort of view. He loves the idea of zooming in on an object or following an object along. It makes it a more personal sort of feeling, gives the audience an idea of what it's like to be in the character's shoes in some cases.
Ben, if you will stay here, it will be too tough for you to be with him and then...
Timur comes up with lots of ideas, and they come fast and furious. And the trick is obviously keeping up with them. So, you know, we'd be getting boards on the day of shooting and things like that. Or, you know, some boards would be staying since the beginning of the, you know, even in pre-production, saying, these are some of the ideas that we want. A lot of them were thumbnail sketches that he'd just scribble on the back of a napkin, or, you know, full-on sequences that we'd see from start to finish, saying this is the beats that we're trying to achieve there.
On all the action sequences, it was all storyboarded and laid out, you know, really well. And, you know, it was really valuable for those sequences so that you didn't make a mistake and miss something that was really crucial to telling the story.
For Timur, storyboarding is not just fixing, like you fix the ideas on the paper. Storyboarding for Timur is the process. It's not a result. It's the process when you can find something that you really don't understand.
I'm drawing my storyboards. Usually it's a concept. It's a conceptual thing. And then Indar is great.
Just nod, just smile and nod.
He's very unique because he's not a storyboard artist who is just drawing pictures. He's a storyboard artist who is interpreting. He can develop ideas, and I trust him, and he understands better than anybody what I'm looking for.
Every time he thinks about audience, every time he thinks it's like roller coaster or it's like diving. Let's do this scene like diving in the ocean. And now I understand what he means. It's like something mystical, but roller coaster is like yoo-hoo, and you don't know it. When you fall, when you go up, when you go down, and now you also understand precisely what he wants.
He'll start with an idea or a specific gag and then work it into an entire sequence. For example, in the Stampede sequence, he really loved the idea that he's kind of out in the ocean, which sounds like a really strange sort of thing, that Abe is surrounded by a sea of horses, and there's all these rolling hills off into the background that are covered in horses. That was one of his big motifs, just from a visual point of view, that he kept on going back into. Or being on a freeway in the middle of the night. So, for example, Abe is sitting or standing there in the field, and by him come these cars or horses rushing past, and they're coming out of the smoke or the fog, and he can't see anything. That's kind of the motif that he kind of builds on.
We developed the Stampede idea. It was a key action scene of the movie because it's how this movie happened, because we made a pre-visualization of this scene. We made it in Moscow, and we developed this whole scene, and we presented it to Fox Studio, and everybody understood that it's a movie. Then we found the best people who can execute it, because unfortunately we cannot shoot a scene with 1,000 horses. It's almost impossible now. And we found people who can make it. It's a Weta studio in New Zealand, and almost, I don't know, all the horses, every environment is digital.
Weta doing all the horses, did a brilliant job with, the horses just, you'd never think for a second that they weren't real. And you could never be in that environment to shoot that stuff. And yet, hopefully, it feels real.
All of the beats taking place on horseback, we shot on a green screen stage. So we built 2 mechanical gimbals that were covered in green all around. And we had our actors doing the majority of their stunts. Actually, I think they did 90% of the stunts themselves on the green screen gimbals. So it was a lot of wire work, it was fantastic, and we shot that over the course of around 2.5 days.
So these are all, you can see previs still left in here at the moment. Virtual horses, virtual environment, some virtual characters like there. Virtual characters that was shot real, but without real horses. You could never photograph a scene like this, both from a safety standpoint and just a physical standpoint.
I like digital creations because I can do whatever I want. I can whatever I can imagine.
Let's move on because I think it's good.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Next bit.
You know, a lot of the bigger moments in the film are just born out of Timur's imagination. You know, we'd be sitting across each other at a table, and he would have an image in his head or an idea or something that he wanted to accomplish, and we would sort of talk about it. And one of the big ones, obviously, is the train sequence at the end of the film.
We broke it up into 2 different parts. One is the actual train on the bridge, which is a CG train. The bridge is on fire, it's falling, it's splintering. It's fairly cut and dry in that sense, that, you know, you have a good idea what nighttime looks like, what a bridge on fire looks like, and what a train looks like. It's just executing, which is the tricky bit. You know, you want to do it on a very grand, epic scale that looks really cool. So that was one of the big VisFX hurdles that we had to deal with. The other one, which is actually, funny enough, more challenging than that, was trying to find out what the look of the night was going to be on top of the train. So in other words, what it would look like fighting in smoke on the roof of the train with lights flickering by and embers zipping through the air. And that's the trickier thing, because no one knows what that looks like. And it's coming up with a look that is both magical and at the same time believable. And I think that was really successful in a lot of ways.
Timur's probably, his style couldn't exist if it weren't for the state-of-the-art of visual effects to a certain extent, and that's true with camera as well, and just what you can do with, you know, stunts and things like this. The state-of-the-art of that stuff is really high, all those fields, and he's got a great sandbox to play in.